Hi and welcome. Today we are going to discuss about fall of humanities, the discipline. We have a very interesting panel. I want to begin. I want to begin with Dr. Sinha. Dr. Sinha, you're known to be the person who played a major role in establishing one of the biggest business institutes of this country, Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. And now you're trying to set up something which seems to be completely different, more to look at liberal arts, humanities as a subject. Tell us why the shift. Does really India need a lot of more people with humanities background?
See, not just India, but I think the world needs people of all kinds and all backgrounds and all kinds of training. My own training was in engineering, and I have done most of my work in business and now in media. So it's not like I needed to be a business educated guy to be in business or a liberal arts educated person to be in media. I think the basic thesis I have is that you just need a very sound undergraduate education that enables you to do anything. And in today's world, it is particularly relevant that you should be able to tackle problems across different types of issues, sectors, and so on. But I think the challenge in India has been that in the last, I would say 3-4 decades, we have neglected the humanities. The balance has tilted much more in favor of business and engineering and commerce. I think these things happen in the evolution of any country. These are tied to economic cycles. We have just emerged from a period when we were, as you know, held back. Now that business is growing, the assumption is that business skills are required because our large part of our growth came from IT. You know, if you look at where it's not about engineering education, but you look at where the engineering students are going, they're all going to IT.
Yeah.
Liberal arts people are getting trained in institutions and going into IT.
Yeah.
So that's a natural phenomenon. Because of that, I think liberal arts and humanities have gotten neglected. They have not gotten the attention either from the government or from the private sector. And that is the balance that we believe needs to be corrected. That's really the rationale behind doing this.
But do you think India as a country has reached a position in which time has come that one must now look back and take a step back and sort of assess where we have as in terms of education as well as our focus when it comes to education has been, and we need to move? I mean, while of course one doesn't say that you stop teaching businesses or engineering and medical, but it's time that humanities should also strike back, if I may use that word.
I think so. I would put a stake in the ground and say that yes, I think we need to bring humanities back into the balance. And I think that will need effort because our employers have started to gravitate towards engineering and business. Our investments, both by government as well as by private sector, has gone into that. The government has been creating other institutions. I should say that, you know, they're building central universities, the state universities. But even within those universities, if you look, they tend to focus on first, let's start a business school, engineering school, because that's where the money is, right? So where the money is attracts the institution. I do think that we need to correct that, and I say that also for another reason. It's why balance. I mean, balance is important, but I do think that we need many more people who are well-rounded from an education perspective so that they can tackle some of our toughest challenges. Our problems in India are very, very complicated. And I think a liberal arts and humanities education prepares you much better to be flexible, to be able to look at problems from multiple perspectives.
We'll come back to the fact how it's linked up with, let's say, the politics of today and everything. Before that, Mr. Verillaud, you're the vice president of Sciences Po Institute. I have myself gone to, and it's known to be one of the best social sciences institutes in Europe, and it has in fact produced some of the best politicians, or may call it best or bad, that might be a subjective matter, but it has a record of having produced civil servants as well as politicians. Why is social science important for a country?
If you want to answer the issues of our time, wherever it is, in any country, you need to have a capacity of questioning those issues, and I guess the social sciences bring you tools that enables you to to question and to build the problematic you need to build to try to answer or to respond to this kind of thing. But disciplines are not, if you take them separately, you might get into a very narrow path, and your capacity of getting a real problematic might be quite short. So the point is not only focusing on the social sciences or on each discipline of the social sciences, but it's bridging the social sciences. So the multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach in the education is, I think, fundamental. I think it's more important today than it was in the past because there's been some transformations. One of the transformations is that today knowledge is available to everyone. I mean, to the interconnectivity you can access, I mean, so the relationship we have with in the educational or pedagogical approach is totally changed. And in that sense, I think it gives back a very strong importance to this multidisciplinary approach.
Well, your institute has been paying a lot of attention to India, and there are students who are going from India to study in France at Sciences Po, which is interesting particularly, and Dr. Sinha would perhaps agree, is that we really had people going abroad to study political science or social science subjects. We did have doctors, engineers, IT, even journalism to Columbia perhaps, but we really had people going to institute abroad and studying, humanities subject. It was unheard of. Why is Sciences Po giving so much importance to India? Is it, I'm sure there is something beyond just getting the fees out of the students, Indian students. Why the focus on India? Is it something to do with the fact that growing role of India when it comes to geopolitics, the leadership role that we all keep talking about?
I would, in a way, again, get back to what you said, and two things. One is, I think, this for Sciences Po is the fact that the quality of the classroom depends clearly on the multiplicity of the point of view, of the analysis, of the background of the people who sit in the classroom and will bring their or build their arguments. I mean, the richness of the arguments will be very strong if you have people that can contradict each other on this. So that, in that sense, I say India is important, as the US is important. As the second one, I would say, and linked to this, is that you mentioned about humanities. That and you give some content about humanities. And what is humanities? What are the humanities in India? And what are the humanities in, I don't know, in the US? What are the humanities in France? Probably we're not talking of the same thing. We might have the same approach of it, which I think in the world of today probably we do. But we put behind very different things. There has been for long, and probably since 19th century, there's no secret for anybody, a very Euro or Western-centric approach to education. I mean, I would be happy to know what was being taught in the universities here when we are talking of humanities.
We study Plato, but we don't study Chanakya, perhaps.
So that's an, but what do we do in Europe? So do we integrate the philosophy, the Indian philosophy? Do we integrate the Chinese philosophy? Do we? So that's where the big work needs to be done. I mean, it's not only talking, I mean, if we can, you mentioned the nationalism aspect of it, but we need to retreat on this, and I think there's a lot of work, and that's where the connection, again, is very important. There are things we cannot invent. There's, I would say, this practice of the humanities you have here, which is, I mean, that was built on centuries and decades. And we have the same thing, probably. If we separate those two, we don't answer the question. We have to bring them together.
That's very interesting. Dr. Sinha, I mean, I would like to pick up from what Mr. Verillaud mentioned about my question, perhaps, which I asked him was, with India's growing role in international community, we do need people who thinks beyond the sciences of it or technology bit out of it, and think about the larger geopolitics. The politics itself is an art, as a lot of people say, and that comes only when you read and dig back into your own history, your philosophy, Indian or Western or whatever. So do you think with the growing role of India and growing complexities of India, I mean, in the country 65 years after being independent has much more problems. The problems are much more complex compared to what perhaps Nehru was the Prime Minister or Indira Gandhi was Prime Minister. Do you think in that situation we do need most sort of emphasis on humanity subjects?
Yes, of course. I think that, I think the biggest problem that we have not been able to solve since we became an independent country is the issue of poverty. And that was the central issue that preoccupied Gandhiji and the freedom fighters. And it is the central issue that still is the biggest issue. And we have to admit that we have failed to do that.
Yes.
Now, I don't know, I'm an engineer and I have a PhD, but I can tell you, I don't think a lot of engineers have a solution to that problem. And mathematical equations don't lead to that either. Physics or chemistry will also not lead to that. So, obviously, I'm also contradicting myself. I don't think the direct education has a bearing on what type of problems you solve. Like I said, you can study whatever and solve whatever. But the point you are making about perspective and developing that perspective in a rich way of reflecting on the history, the past, understanding the nuances, we are now going in to give direct transfers to poor people in India. That's our next big solution. Is that the answer? I have not really seen a good, thoughtful piece of work. I think we need people from lots of different backgrounds and fields to come together to solve these difficult problems. And right now, I think we've lost that edge. Our own problems, I don't think, we actually have people from outside coming and writing books and doing investigations. And every foreign university today has a center for India or a center for South Asia, within which there is a very large group of Indian researchers. But frankly, has JNU, Tata Institute of Social Sciences and so on, I know they do good research, but has it really made an impact? I think that's the question to answer. And I'm not criticizing them, I'm only saying there's need for a lot more to supplement what they are doing.
So you spoke about, of course, the government part of it, but I was really keen to know about the politics. I mean, polity is one thing, but the politics another. The kind of politicians we're getting nowadays, not just politicians, perhaps let's say the public leaders in many sense. I mean, some might not even be there in the electoral politics. Without naming anybody, but we do see some rabid kinds, some, really extreme ultra right-wing kinds who seem to have come from backgrounds, and this is, a few days back we had this huge enormous chat on Twitter about why do these rabid ones, whether they are in Hyderabad or they are in Gujarat or they go to Kumbh, they all seem to be either medical doctors or they seem to have an engineering background. And it's at times shocking because people expect that when people have been educated to a certain level, they're supposed to be more sort of understanding, more nuanced when it comes to their arguments. So do you think even when it comes to the people that we are electing as our leaders, they too need to get a sort of a hold? I know it's a controversial topic, but without...
No, I don't think it is controversial. I think it's just complicated to answer, and that's why you need a liberal arts education. But let me try and attempt to do that, and I will humbly submit that I am still an engineer and a business guy, so I suffer from all the drawbacks that I may bring in my education. But again, it's not about that education. I think you make a good point, and let me try and... See, I think politicians are a reflection of society, so I don't think we should say that the politicians are different, and I think general society is that and what it is. So I think I'll stay away from commenting. I mean, if you look at our politicians, Shashi Tharoor is a liberal arts and a diplomacy guy. There are a lot of lawyers now, which may be not a good idea, but they are there. We certainly have some of the younger politicians have all gone and gotten business degrees from US schools. I think they came from good families. They followed what everybody else in India was doing, who could afford to go abroad and get a business education. So I think they are just following what is happening in society. But I think what you are asking is a good question, and I think the way I would answer it is that it is true that the way education is delivered in our country today, whether it is engineering or it is liberal arts, has become very, very exam focused. And very, very curriculum focused. So if you take a liberal arts curriculum, I don't know where you studied, but if you take any economics curriculum or a history curriculum, you pretty much study only that. And it's in 3 years, and from day one you do some subsidiary subjects, but people don't really pay attention to those. So we have become very narrow in the education that we provide, and we have made it all about passing the exam. In India, cheating, for example, is a big problem. I don't think the problem is cheating. The problem is because people think you take an answer from somewhere and put it in. That's what will, if you truly make the answer subjective, which is debatable or is it truly your view, then you can't cheat. How can you cheat somebody else's view, right? So I think somewhere that is a big national psyche where we become very quick to say it is this or that. Politicians today are also lost. They don't know. So you have to support them. We have to be able to support them, you know, with research, with ideas, with concrete opinions, you know. Most of the people in parliament are voting on issues because somebody told them to, or somebody, do they really believe in that? Do they really understand? We've had some efforts, you know, PRS legislator has started something. You know, in US, there's a huge big thing called congressional research. You know, that's one I'm familiar with. I'm sure other countries have that. Those kinds of, and there are very strong connections between politicians and academic institutions. Not for the kind of nexus we have today, which is about making money, but really about saying, you know, can you help me think through this issue? Can you help me think through these direct transfer issues before I go and take a country's decision for the country?
Mr. Verillaud, coming to you, can you share with us some experiences in France? Particularly, I'm sure France might have also gone through a similar phase that we are at the moment going through in terms of, you know, how as a country develops, there are different stages that you undergo. I mean, you also have extreme views. I mean, one of your extreme leaders almost reached to become a president, but thankfully he was defeated in the last to last elections, I believe, Sarkozy's second term. So do you think that, you know, I mean, share with us some experiences for our Indian, you know, viewers, how, you know, France has dealt with such issues?
I think this is a very touchy subject in many ways. And in France we have this. I mean, there's been a lot of criticism in the last 20 years on the technocrats, people who had been trained, some of them at Sciences Po and at the École Nationale d'Administration in other places. Those people were highly selected, highly trained, I mean, had a very good education, one should say very, very good education. But when we see that the result, their approach to social issues, to political issues and so on, I would say in many ways they were not prepared to this. And why weren't they prepared? Probably because they were set up in a tunnel, if I can put it that way. Same people, coming from the same background, again, well educated, well trained, I should say, but with no comparative expression, with no conflictuality within their education. I think we need this kind of conflictuality. We know today that there is not the situation is not that of technocrats or politicians who will say, well, I have the good technicians that will solve the problem, because we cannot solve the problem today. We know many problems are not solved and won't be solved. We're talking of climate change, of many of these issues. Who's going to solve that? It's not the technicians. So we are in a situation where people, politicians, corporate people and so on, have to have a very strong understanding of scientific issues. And they are not scientists. So how do you mix this? How do you bring this together? Today we have probably tools, and I would say we could invent a new culture where we bring those together. So it's not a question only of humanities, but you have scientific humanities to bring into this. Clearly, people who are in a decision-making position need, whatever background they have, a capacity to bring together the questioning of the sciences to the social sciences. And that you have to build. One must know that the social sciences were created as different science disciplines precisely because of this complexity and the incapacity. We didn't have the tool to encompass this reality, so we've segmented it in political science, in economics, and we have this. Today we can reunite those elements by the internet tools.
One last question before we conclude. We were sitting in the office of Young India Foundation, if you could, or fellowship rather, is it? Young India Fellowship. If you could tell us what is this whole program about, so if any of our young viewers who are watching it could apply this year or next year. I am told there's now the 12 days left to apply for this program.
We started a program called the Young India Fellowship, and we said, why wait for the university? Let us demonstrate what we can do with a pilot program. And that program started last year, where we went out to colleges and universities across the country in all disciplines and told people, if you want to give us 1 year of your life to study liberal arts and humanities, we will make it worth it for you. And we will in fact make it free for you. So we will pay for your education, we will pay for your living expenses in Delhi. And the reason we did this is because we wanted to get people to make that shift. Now we knew as a new institution it would be incredible, and we may not get the smartest and the brightest people, and any program really benefits from having good minds, young minds, which are just sharp and committed. So that's why we made it a full scholarship. But again, the program is really has a few elements into it. One is regular classes, and that is very, very exciting. It's taught by some of the best faculty from around the world, including from Sciences Po. We had some 10 faculty from Sciences Po that came last year to teach a course on urbanization, which was very exciting for our students. They are getting, you know, some of the most inspiring people in the world coming all the way here to teach. We also have very inspiring faculty locally, like people like Andre Bete, Ram Guha, Kaushik Basu, Rudrangshu Mukherjee, Vivek Bhandari, Amita Bhaviskar. I can give you all the names, they are on our website. But these are some of the sharpest minds India has had, who are excellent in the classroom. And these young people are getting exposure to them. Some of them, by the way, don't even teach in India today, anywhere, because of the way our system is recognized, organized. So these are very, this is the interesting part about the curriculum. We also very quickly tell you to have 2 or 3 other elements. We have a project that they work on. The idea is to get them to work on a real life project and get some live work experience before they go into the world. So for 9 months, they organize themselves into a team, and they work with a real organization, whether it's government or public sector or private sector or NGO, on a project, which is like a consulting and research project. They also get a mentor to mentor them on their career. So we have a very interesting mix, very diverse set of mentors from academia, business, NGOs, social sector, who mentor them. And we have a long series of guest lectures of people from prominent backgrounds who have made a mark in their own light.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Sinha and Mr. Verillaud. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you.